Florence Pugh just opened up about finding out she has PCOS and endometriosis in her late 20s and deciding to freeze her eggs. I think this story is making waves because it touches on two major points that are both surprising to some and resonating with a lot of people. Number one, this idea that you can be diagnosed with things like PCOS and endometriosis even in your late 20s or 30s, and grappling with what that could mean for your future fertility. A lot of people have shared that experience. And number two, I think this story normalizes the idea of freezing your eggs even if you're only in your 20s. So I diagnose women with PCOS and endometriosis in their 20s, 30s, and even in their 40s. And these are people who went their whole lives not realizing why they had painful or irregular periods or heavy periods, why they were suffering with problems like hormonal acne, excessive hair growth, sleep disturbance, even mental health issues like anxiety and depression, and not linking them all together and realizing it was likely part of a constellation of signs and symptoms of PCOS. On average, it takes about 8 to 10 years for women to be diagnosed with endometriosis. Just yesterday, I had two follow-ups with patients who were in their late 20s, early 30s that came to me to talk about egg freezing. One had extremely heavy periods her whole life and had never once been offered an ultrasound to investigate this. And another had really painful periods that went away when she started the pill and was on it for long term. So in the process of taking their history and scanning them, I gave them their diagnosis. The first patient had a huge 8-centimeter fibroid. She had no idea about it. And the other one, I told her she had endometriosis. This happens weekly. Think to see a rich celebrity who has all the access in the world share that they've had a similar experience, sharing their emotion of shock at finding out that the symptoms that they've normalized and other people have normalized for years were actually major gynecologic conditions that could impact their future fertility. And I think that's compelling to a lot of people. It's also so refreshing to see someone normalizing the idea of egg freezing in your 20s. When you freeze your eggs in your 20s, you're freezing them at their most optimal stage, the best quality possible. And most people in their 20s will have lots of eggs and tend to respond well. The younger you are, the less eggs you need to be successful should you ever need to rely on them to build your family. And no, unlike that frozen chicken breast that you may have been ignoring in the back of your freezer for the past decade, vitrified eggs don't get freezer burn. So the amount of time the eggs are frozen are not going to change their reproductive potential over time. The main downside to freezing eggs very, very early in life is really the additional years of storage, because it's likely to be a longer time frame before you would actually come back to use them if you need to use them. I've heard a lot of people get advice in their early 30s when they ask or inquire about egg freezing. You don't need to freeze your eggs. Let's wait and see if you meet someone. And if you don't by 35, then do it. And I actually think that's not great advice. Nowadays, I'm seeing a lot of younger women doing it whether they're partnered or not. And I actually think that's really smart and empowering.